to 2025 session of the Tobago House of Assembly. This time, Minority Leader Kelvin Morris will campaign for an amendment to the standing orders to establish a definitive time frame for the submission of written answers and consequences for non-compliance. This, as Morris believes, the Executive Council has repeatedly failed to provide timely responses to written questions on issues within the Tobago House of Assembly. Thursday, April 24th, from 1:30 p.m. You're welcome to come in and look on, or log on to our social media spaces to witness the action. Either way, don't miss it.
Almighty God, as we come together to begin our meeting of the Assembly, we humbly beseech you to grant all our members the light and guidance of your Holy Spirit, that we may wisely take counsel together and come to such decisions as shall promote your glory and the well-being of all our citizens in this land, so that peace and happiness, truth and justice may be enjoyed by all people. Grant this for the sake of Jesus Christ, our Lord. Amen. You may be seated.
Oath of allegiance of a new member. Announcements by the Deputy Presiding Officer.
Leader of Assembly Business. Just a second.
Announcements by the Deputy Presiding Officer.
Sorry. Honorable members, I have received leave of absence today from today's sitting from Councillor Tasha Boris, Councillor Petalan Roberts, Assemblyman Natisha Charles Pantin, member for Bagatelle Bacalet, Assemblyman Joel Sampson, member for Bonaccord Crown Point, Assemblyman Watson Duke, member for Roxborough Argyle, and Honorable Chief Secretary Farley Chavez Agustin. The leaves are granted.
Assembly bills sent back from Cabinet. Assembly laws brought back from Parliament. petitions, papers, presentation of reports from the Dispute Resolution Commission, select committees, Chief Secretary's question, questions to secretaries, questions for oral answer.
Leader of Assembly Business.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. I'm requesting that questions 264, 267, 268, 270, 272, 273, 275, and 276 be deferred to the next sitting owing to the absence of the members.
The questions are deferred. Let's proceed to question number 269. Minority Leader.
Question 269 to the Secretary of Infrastructure, Quarries and Urban Development, Assemblyman Trevor James.
Okay, Secretary for Infrastructure is not here at the moment. So we'll have to defer these questions. Question, a Minority Leader again.
Is the Leader of Assembly Business, do you have any idea where the member is?
Deputy Presiding Officer, may we defer this question, please? Thank you.
Question 274 to the Secretary of Health, Wellness and Social Protection, Assemblyman Faith Brebner.
In light of the recent passing of a medical professional, can the Secretary confirm the following: whether an investigation has been initiated into the death? If yes, please provide an update on the current status, and can the Secretary please state if a settlement was offered? Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, since I've been Secretary with responsibility for health, wellness and social protection, several medical professionals have passed, unfortunately, and without more specific information, I am unable to answer this question.
We were clear recent, and as far as I know, there was one recent passing. The word recent is instructive in this question.
Minority Leader. Recent is a subjective period. So could you...
For the elucidation of all of Tobago, this question came with a name, and the name was removed because the standing orders are clear. Names are to be kept on the question to make the question intelligible. However, for some reason, the name was removed. So if the member is unable to put recent and the member of her staff that passed away, that is no fault of the minority, but of course, we are very concerned that this question came with a name and the name was removed, and now the Secretary is hiding behind that very technicality, because she's quite clear who we are talking about, and perhaps I should give her name, Miss Daria Archie.
Minority Leader. If the name was taken off of the order paper, there is a reason behind that. Just a second. There is a reason behind that. I am absolutely positive that there would have been a date that this person died. So even if you didn't want to use the name, you could have affixed a date to it, and then that question would have been much more relevant. Member for Glamorgan Belgarden, could you furnish the answer to the question, because he did call the name?
Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, the question that is on the order paper is very vague, and I do not have the answer because I came with the question that is on the order paper in mind. I have not seen any other document that includes a specific name other than what the member spoke about. I am therefore not prepared to answer this question. And may I add, though, generally, because of issues relating to patient confidentiality, I am concerned that going into a response for any individual would breach medical confidentiality issues. But either way, Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, I can't answer the question that is on the order paper.
Which is it? Is the Secretary unprepared to provide an answer, or is the Secretary saying once there's anything dealing with public monies and any outcome that she's going to hide behind the preface that it is confidential? Which is it? Is it that she's unprepared, or is she saying that any information dealing with a patient will be confidential and therefore no information is to be had by the public? Which is it?
Okay, so, member, in terms of the investigation, without going into the person's client-patient relationship, I would like a written answer to be furnished, please.
And that is what makes the motion so relevant. Go ahead.
That's it.
Yeah, that's it. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer. So, Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, with your guidance, we will refile this question, and we hope that it would get the necessary approval so it can be intelligible and properly answered by the Secretary.
Matters of urgent public importance. Statements by secretaries or assistant secretaries. Personal explanation. Introduction of bills. Motion.
Minority Leader, Assemblyman Kelvin Morris, you may now move the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer. And Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, what just transpired in the very few minutes of questions and answer provides ample credence as to why this motion today is most relevant and most critical, because this motion reads, for members of the Tobago public, whereas the Executive Council has demonstrated a disregard for transparency, accountability, and good governance in its reporting to the Tobago House of Assembly, and whereas the failure of secretaries to provide timely responses to written questions on general administrative issues of divisions, including but not limited to finance, procurement, ethics, and other issues of significant public interest deprives the House and the public of critical information, including matters related. Be it resolved that this House highlights that members of the Executive Council have failed to provide responses to written questions and urges that all outstanding responses to questions for written answers be submitted without further delay. And be it further resolved that this House supports the Standing Orders Committee to consider and recommend an appropriate amendment to the standing orders to establish a definitive time frame for the submission of written answers and to prescribe consequences for non-compliance. And Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, while this motion treats with the issue of written questions, what was just pellucidly displayed before us is that this administration...
Remember, you're going into a motion without the motion even having a seconder. So I would like you would have your opportunity to expand on your motion. Is there a seconder for this motion?
Okay. Huh? No, the motion input move yet? So I have to finish the presentation and then we...
Wait.
Sorry.
All right, sorry. Go ahead.
So, Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, as I was saying, though this motion is specific to written questions, what is pellucidly clear is that this administration, they have demonstrated to all of Tobago that they are hell-bent on disregarding transparency, accountability, and good governance. Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, this house, which we have dubbed the People's House, is so named because we are servants of the people. And therefore, the questions that are asked on behalf of the people. And the answers that should be provided on behalf and to the people to whom we are all elected and in some instances appointed to serve. And therefore, Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, it is an absolute abomination that when questions are filed in this House, some as far back as January 2023, 2 years later, Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, there's no answer to be had. Say what you want about the minority leader, the minority councillor, the minority. But ultimately, the non-responsiveness of this administration is a disrespect not only to this House, Honorable House, but to every resident of Tobago, Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer. Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, and what makes this even more concerning is the fact that when you peruse the unanswered questions, only one member remains without is compliant. One member, and that is the leader of Assembly Business. Every other secretary, including the Chief Secretary, is in contempt of this House and has failed on many occasions to respond to important questions. And Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, the question and answer period is one of those opportunities that allows for the House to do that which it is empowered to do. Scrutinize, review, provide oversight, hold members accountable, get information, share information, and keep the House apprised of the governance of this island. And when you have persons in the position as the Chief Secretary, the head of the executive, being non-compliant, then we know as an island that our business, our management of our affairs is in deep and dire straits. Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, I would just like to share with you some examples of the questions that are currently unanswered based on our records. And even share with you name and shame based on our records, the persons who are so culpable. Chief Secretary, based on our records, over 20 questions, including those on overseas travel, consultancies, carnival expenditure, and the oil spill cleanup. The Secretary for Infrastructure, who up to this point has not showed up without any sort of excuse to answer a question. He is on record as not answering 10 questions, some relating to multi-million-dollar roadworks, procurement irregularities, and even a project near his personal property. The Deputy Chief Secretary has failed to respond to several questions concerning hiring and expenditure in her division. The Secretary of Tourism, Culture and Antiquities, who, aside from the member of Roxborough, is perhaps the most absent member of this House, failed to answer over 5 questions concerning hiring and expenditure in her division. Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, the new minted Secretary of Finance, only a couple months of age, but has failed to answer 3 questions on the job. The Secretary of Agriculture, she has ignored over 6 questions, including matters of the shark attack. And of course, the Secretary of Settlements has also failed to answer and provide answers to questions. Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, these figures paint a troubling picture. This to me, while one you may say is a one-off, but this to me paints a picture of something that is systemic and sustained, and therefore as a House, we must find a way to regulate and call these members to account. Because it cannot be in a place where we are duty-bound to provide and be transparent and be accountable to the people of Tobago that members are flouting these standing orders. Members are refusing to provide the answers, and there seems to be little or nothing we as a House can do. Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, I've looked at jurisdictions near and far. Our Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago, for instance. I've looked at the UK Parliament. I've looked at other Commonwealth parliaments, such as the Canadian Parliament. And what all of these parliaments have in common is the fact that there are consequences and there are clear timelines as to when questions must be answered, whether written or oral, and there are consequences for non-refusal of answering these questions. And therefore, it is for this reason I am strongly submitting that we as a House today also consider proposals to treat with this matter once and for all. Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, in treating with this motion, we had to reconcile questions, because what I noticed as well is that whereas we would have, based on our records, a number of questions unanswered, and when we check with the Assembly Legislature, they would have on record a different number of questions unanswered, and even on the side of the executive, based on my information, they are saying that the information as shared with them by the legislature perhaps is inconsistent with their information. And therefore, it also suggests to me that somewhere along the documentation and repository of this information, there is some challenges, some shortcomings, which must also be addressed and rectified. But the point of it all, and there's without a doubt, based on all information, is that notwithstanding the accuracy of the numbers of what is outstanding, the fact is this administration has had a history, a long history dating back from at least January 2023 of not responding to questions. And the reason why this is important and important to the people of Tobago, as I said, some of these questions treat with the expenditure of multi-million-dollar contracts. In one case, Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, one of the questions dealt with roads. And we've been asking about the procurement of roads and how these roads were procured. Roads cumulatively cost over $150 million. Roads where we were told and given commitments that no payment will be made until the roads are completed. And based on our information, we are hearing to be confirmed, but not responded to, that payments were made in contradiction to the guarantees that were given to this House. And therefore, Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, it is important that explanations are given if the information is true as to why you would give a commitment to the House that your arrangements is such that you have a deferred payment arrangement where no payment will be made until the project is completed 9 months in the first instance and a final 18 months thereafter. And only to hear that that has been retracted, payments have been made without the approval or even coming to the House and alerting the House that this commitment I gave to you as a House, we are now reverting from that decision, and give an explanation. Because you are not giving the explanation to me, you're giving the explanation to the people of Tobago so they can understand how their monies are being spent. Because, Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, the people of Tobago must be aware that perhaps the question and answer mechanism is but the only functional way of holding this current administration to account. Because at this time, we are making some headway, thankfully, with the Public Accounts Committee, but we have not been able to have one inquiry after 3.5 years. And therefore, this opportunity is but the most effective means of scrutiny, public scrutiny, we have available to us here on the island. And even in trying to ensure that there's transparency and accountability, we are having a situation where members are ducking, hiding, and in some instances, simply refusing to answer. And this is an administration that gave the people of Tobago the assurance that we will be so accountable. In fact, I remember the Deputy Chief Secretary saying to Tobagonians that they will be so accountable when it comes to the procurement process of goods and services that they would establish this website. And on this website, any Tobagonian can go on that website and get information on any contract that has been awarded. They could see the date of the contract, the persons who bid, how much they bid, and who the contract was awarded to. That was the commitment. And after so giving that commitment, when the people entrusted in you the ability to come and govern, now when questions are being asked, you are simply refusing to answer. If that isn't a breach of trust and that pact with the people, I do not know what is. Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, we have a situation where we have asked about travel. And specifically, we have zeroed in on the division of tourism, transport, and antiquities, or however it is, antiquities and transport. And the reason why we have zeroed in on that division is because almost every Monday morning, someone from that division is on some expedition outside of Trinidad and Tobago. And therefore, that up to this point that question has been filed, we have not been able to get a true and full disclosure as to what is the exact cost overall.
Deputy Presiding Officer, a point of clarity to the minority leader. Didn't the member for Roxborough Argyle ask that question and an oral answer was given by the Secretary of of Tourism in the last sitting? I'm just trying to get that clear if the minority leader to Roxborough Argyle, if he didn't ask a question in the House for oral answer to the Secretary of Tourism, Culture, Antiquities and Transportation, and she spent quite some time bringing clarity to that.
So this is why we are on written question, because the difference between an oral question and a written question, it allows you to get more detail. And therefore, this question was filed before. So even if the question got on the order paper, it is of no fault to the minority because the question was for written, and there's a difference between written, because what we would have asked for, and that is why you should have allowed me to continue, we asked for details as to who on every trip. We want to know every trip you went on. We want to know the contingent. Who were the persons who went with you? We want to know what was the per diem received, what was airfare. We want to know where you went, why you went, how you went. So that is the purpose of written questions. It is questions that cannot be properly elucidated within the short space of time for oral. Then you have to put a prepared, detailed presentation to the answer. And therefore, that question, the reason why that question is important, because when we do our calculation, the Secretary alone, perhaps by now, would have received per diem of over $500,000. And that to me is alarming, that while we have people could barely get a job, people could barely get food, grocery and so, one member of this assembly in per diem alone would have received over $500,000. And perhaps that is the reason why she doesn't want to answer the question, because we'll be able to verify and validate once and for all whether that information that is coming to us is true. So, Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer and people of Tobago, I want you to understand that when we come here and we are reporting to you that we have asked some very important questions, and the members refuse to answer these questions, and when we peruse the standing orders of this assembly as currently constructed, there is little to nothing that we can do except to have this debate that we are having here, so that members with good conscience, if they really truly believe in transparency, accountability, and good governance, will all agree for us to fix this issue once and for all by having their colleagues answer the questions that are outstanding without delay, and two, by also giving and instructing the Standing Orders Committee to treat with this matter as a matter of importance, because I know at this time the Standing Orders Committee is wrapping up some of their work, and perhaps we can add this as a point of reference so that they can include in the wrapping up of their work as an important element to treat with, because without consequences, this will continue. And today it is me complaining as a minority, But perhaps in 6 months, it might just be you on the other side who would be on this side complaining. So, Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, one of my responsibility as minority leader is to leave this space better than I met it. And this is one issue I think we all, as a house, can agree to, that it matters not who sits in the seat, that we need to fix, and we need to fix now. I have some recommendations which I will like to share based on looking at what happens. For example, in the United Kingdom, I would share with you what happens, right. So in the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago, I think it's Standing Order 25-6, mandates that a minister must respond to a question on notice within 21 days unless otherwise directed by the Speaker. There is a mechanism to follow up with a request for an oral explanation if the reply is not forthcoming. This protects the integrity of the parliamentary process. And what I also noticed today, Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, which also needs to be addressed, is that in other jurisdictions, when a member is absent, it does not provide the executive with a cop-out. Usually, that question is answered by either a designated member, whether it be the junior member of the ministry or the leader of assembly business usually takes up, because we have a situation here where one member, she has missed 2 consecutive sittings, and it means questions from the previous sitting has questions they have been deferred, and questions from this sitting they are now also being deferred. And if she doesn't show up for the next sitting, it means that once she's not here, those questions, and some of them after a while, becomes irrelevant to the climate. So therefore, it is important that this is something that we also consider once we all agree that there are issues to be treated with when it comes to us treating with questions and answers. And that is the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago. In the UK House of Commons, Standing Order 22C requires that ministers provide a response to written questions within a maximum of 7 sitting days for ordinary written questions. Of course, we meet once a month, so that perhaps the time frame is not realistic for our purposes, and 5 days for named day questions. Failure, what I like about this one here, failure to respond can lead to a formal complaint to the procedure committee or even the Speaker, and there are consequences to be had. In Canada's House of Commons, Standing Order 39-5 obliges a minister to respond to written questions within 45 calendar days. I think this is a fair number. Failure to do so triggers a procedural right for the members to raise the issue during question period under a Standing Order 52 adjournment debate, effectively forcing public answers in the chamber. And I particularly like this because it means that the member must be held to account and is held up to account in a public manner. Because what I recognize is, to the credit, after a period of being very tardy with oral questions, the executive, they have improved in that regard, and it's because all of Tobago is seeing them having to be responding to these oral questions. But the written questions are simply on the order paper, and because we don't have a name and shame kind of arrangement, they go basically without any sort of oversight. And therefore the public doesn't even know until perhaps now that so many questions are on the order paper unanswered. So what do I propose? This pattern must be addressed, and it therefore requires us to find a way to have this dealt with in a formal manner. And as I said, we would definitely need to have the Standing Orders Committee do its work, look at the time period for questions and answer, look at what is an appropriate consequence for those who fail to answer, and therefore, Mr. Presiding Officer, once this is had, it would ensure that those who surreptitiously and skillfully attempt to make their way around and skirt the provisions of the standing orders and avoid answering to the people of Tobago will be held accountable once and for all. Mr. Presiding Officer, just want to say to the people of Tobago, you are the ones that hold the key. We are your servants. You employ us. And you ultimately have to hold those you entrust with the responsibility to govern your affairs. You are the ones to hold them ultimately accountable. And you need to do your analysis, because every so often people come to you for their votes. And when they come to you singing all kinds of sweet melodies. And they will tell you the moon and the stars. But ultimately, you have to do the analysis and assess whether what was told to you and what is actually being delivered in action or through policies or just through these very sittings, whether those promises are being kept. I reminded you about the promise to have that website that ought to be an avenue of transparency in procurement. And the question is, where is that website? I remind you of their promise to levy fix this, including being more accountable, being more transparent. And the question you have to ask yourself is, have they fixed this? And as I wrap up, on Monday, you, the people of Tobago, have an opportunity. You have an opportunity to determine whether you are, in the first instance, comfortable with what so far has been promised and what has been delivered, including the commitment to be transparent, the commitment to be accountable, and the commitment to answer the questions that is asked on your behalf. And therefore, with those few words, Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, I so beg to move.
Is there a seconder for this motion?
Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, I beg to second this motion and reserve my right to speak at a later time in this debate.
Honourable members, the question proposed is, whereas the Executive Council has demonstrated a disregard for transparency, accountability and good governance in its reporting to the Tobago House of Assembly, and whereas the failure of secretaries to provide timely responses to written questions on general administrative issues of divisions, including but not limited to finance, procurement, ethics, and other issues of significant public interest, deprives the House and the public of critical information, including matters related. Be it resolved that this House highlights that members of the Executive Council have failed to provide responses to written questions and urges that all outstanding responses to the questions for written answers be submitted without further delay. And be it further resolved that this House supports the Standing Orders Committee to consider and recommend an appropriate amendment to the standing orders to establish a definitive time frame for the submission of written answers and to prescribe consequences for non-compliance. Member for Belgarden, Glamorgan, you may now join the debate.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer. The aim of me rising to my feet is to simply highlight two quick things that are critical to the functioning of this August House. The first is the fact that we do currently have a standing orders that outline the functioning of the House. That document includes the various committees that govern how this House functions. And one of those committees is the Standing Orders Committee. And for the sake of those listening, that is section 74 of the THA Standing Orders. It says, the Standing Orders Committee shall have the duty of considering from time to time and reporting on all such matters relating to standing orders as may be referred to it by the Assembly. The presiding officer shall be a member and the chairman of the Standing Orders Committee. The Standing Orders Committee shall consist of 5 members, inclusive of the chairman. It's important to note, Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, that the member who raised this motion is a current member of the Standing Orders Committee. And I would therefore go to another section which speaks specifically to how we amend the standing orders, Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, which is section 90. Unless the presiding officer otherwise directs, not less than 12 days notice of a motion to amend the standing orders shall be given, and the notice shall be accompanied by a draft of the proposed amendments. I sat and I listened, Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, and the member has identified several suggested amendments, which I am suggesting, Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, that he presents in the Standing Order Committee that he is currently a part of. And if that was done last year, the year before, we've been here for a while, I'm sure the 12 days notice to amend the standing orders would have passed already, and we therefore would have been in a space at this point, Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, where whatever the Standing Orders Committee agrees to and brings to the House would have been implemented by now, Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer. So I simply want to place on record that there is a very clear, specific mechanism to do exactly what the member is requesting. And given that he is an actual member of the committee that has the authority to do this, I am wondering, why are we wasting state's time and resources to bring something that could have been dealt with in meetings that he was a part of? And with that, Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, I thank you.
Yeah, Chris? Member for Bethel New Grange, you may now join the debate.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, and I want to again thank the people of Bethel New Grange that affords me the privilege to stand in the House and to share from time to time. Just a couple of things consistent with what the Deputy Chief Secretary shared. But before I get to that, you know, there's a soca artist in Trinidad whose name is Rodney LeBlanc, aka Benjai. Wrote a song in 2002. I fed up at the same thing over and over, over and over. And when one considers the motions plural being brought to the House here by the minority, we have to call on Benjai. Because it's the same thing over and over. This house is really supposed to be a sacred space, a place of truth and edification and inspiration and respect, and it must never be allowed, I want to say this clearly, it must never be allowed to sink into a kind of cesspool of untruth, disingenuous rants and disgusting razzmatazz. Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, the Standing Orders Committee have been meeting. I was told they met about 7 times. I was told as well that all the matters that was raised here, even what Dr. Faith was sharing, are matters that could have and should have come up in those meetings. The report has already been done, as far as I was told, and the only reason why it had probably not been laid, they didn't have the final meeting, I guess because of the elections and so on. So if the minority leader, let's just reason it out, if the minority leader is a part of the committee, the very things that he raised are things that should have, could have been raised in that meeting, in that committee. Okay? He didn't. Why? What is the reason for bringing it here today? That is the question. What is the reason? I want to submit that the only reasonable conclusion that I could come to is that the intention really is again to use this place to try and bring this government to disrepute. That is all it is. That is what he does every time.
45-5, Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer. Yes. Imputing improper motive, I was clear as to what we are addressing and what the issues are. So I don't know what he's alluding to outside of that. 45-5.
Member, you may continue.
Yes. So, again, I think it is a reasonable conclusion. If a forum outside of here where there is cameras, lights, and action is been provided to treat with the very things that he has raised, and so on, and to consider the legitimacy of same, and you refuse to do that. And you see, the reason why it is suspect is because it is consistent with all the motions you have brought before.
Member.
45-5, this member is saying, I refuse. I've attended every standing order coming. So how he could say, I refuse to participate? That is important.
You're deaf.
Come on.
Member. Member.
So,
He didn't say he refused to participate.
so what he's saying I refuse to do?
He said you refused, according to what I heard, he said you refused to bring your recommendations there. That's what
Right, so how he's not a part of this? How could he make such an allegation?
So did you bring them the suggestions there, sir?
Mr. Deputy
So I'm
Presiding,
asking you a question, member. Did you bring the suggestions there?
you have to understand how the Standing Order Committee functions. We went over something that was already existed. It was never highlighted as an issue. Just as a point of clarification, there was a number of issues we reviewed as some items to
Member for
appeal.
Darrell Springwood, I'm asking you a direct question now.
The matter did not arise.
Member for Darrell Springwood,
Yeah.
I am asking because you are saying
Yeah.
that he is saying that you did
I
not.
refuse. Use the word he used.
Okay, so he's saying in essence, refuse whatever the synonym. Just a second, I'm speaking. I'm asking you a direct question. Did you bring those suggestions to the Standing Order Committee?
The matter didn't arise because we had specific issues we were looking at.
Remember? Continue.
So don't use that I refused.
So,
that is improper.
So, I would want to say it again, Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, because it is a reasonable conclusion. We would like to go to believe that the minority leader is an intelligent man. And I suspect that every motion that he brings here, there is a purpose behind it. And what I am saying, material, is that this motion, when you look at the wording of the motion and so on, it is consistent with all the motions he has brought in the past. That is not a misrepresentation. And he has raised that there are, these in his contribution, these suggestions that he has made. But I'm saying there's a forum that has been provided for that. And you did not do that in that forum. So what then can be your purpose of bringing it here? And so my reasonable conclusion, based on even the tenor of his language as well, is to vilify the government. You understand? And that is by his language. And it's to disparage, it's to distract. And it is to depart from the spirit of the house. And I don't know that is unreasonable. And this is not the purpose of this place. And we must reject it and resent it forthwith. We must not allow this thing to continue. So we will not subject ourselves as a government, we will not subject ourselves to the poisonous political postulations of the minority, nor will we subject ourselves to camouflage campaigning either, because we notice how you end up. We notice how you end. We know really it's a campaign thing you're trying here with the house, but we're not stupid. We are aware.
Remember, language.
My apologies. My apologies. My apologies. As I say that, I remember this song, you think you're bright. But we ain't born last night. We ain't born last night. But I would want to suggest to the minority leader, because we sense that it is an attempt to try and use the house for a campaign place. I would want to suggest to him that you could take their rhetoric to the next big red line. Either the red line or whatever red rubbish you all concoct. Right? Take that there, spew the mess there, but not in this house. We will not stand for it, not here. We understand what you're about, and we're not standing for that. So I just wanted to say that, and in conclusion, Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, we see the motion for what it is and for what it is not. No matter how the minority try to dice it, or slice it, we understand it is an attempt to use the house as per usual to try to disparage and to try to bring down the government and all these kinds of things. And I was even inquiring that this selective vigilance that he has about answering our questions, that former PNM governments in here were double as notorious, if that is what you're talking about, in terms of them response to question. I spoke to minority leaders that were in another dispensation to us. You understand? So don't act like this, that you know in minority that you are so, and the group that you represent are so holy and they are so upright as it relates to their response when they were in power. You understand? You see? We understand that it is an attempt to be political, and we will not have it. This is a place for us to discuss serious business, and anytime we sense that you are trying to use the house for some kind of political agenda, we are going to stand vehemently against it. We know we are on the cusp of an election campaign. Take a campaign elsewhere, not in this house, right? The motion, not in this house. Not in this house. The motion pretty much, as all that we have heard here before, is a nonsensical one. It is, to my mind, it is utter rubbish. There's been a forum provided for, if you have recommendations and so on, for the things that you claim to be so concerned about. Use the forum. Use the forum and let the report come to the house, and we shall interrogate the report here and so on. If after those things, that the things still persist, then we can say, well, you have a case, but not now. You are trying to mislead the house. The intent of the motion is ill-timed, ill-advised. Its intent is to try to disparage the government, and we will not have it. Thank you, Mr. Deputy President.
Minority Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, for allowing me the opportunity to contribute to this debate. Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, I rise in full and unwavering support to this motion before this Honorable House, calling into question this very troubling pattern of unanswered question in the House. And Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, the member who just spoke comes to the House time and time again and speak about respect and being respectful. But this member is oftentimes the culprit of being most disrespectful and saying the most disrespectful and disparaging things in the House. So, Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, I would encourage the member to practice what he preaches. The member also spoke to the fact that there's a place that we should, which is the Standing Orders Committee, that these matters should be discussed, and the whole issue of politicizing, and again saying that the minority leader is being untruthful. But Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, there are questions on the order paper for more than 2 years that have been unanswered. And thankfully, the minority leader would have presented a motion that although the member for Bakalet is not here, a written response came. And when we did the research, Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, so this response came while we are sitting, going to debate a motion for answers, written questions that are not answered. And there's a question here. This is question number 114 to the Secretary in the Division of Food Production. And the question was about listing farmers and agricultural areas disaggregated by village, type of produce, and the quantity of produce annually. So, Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, this question 114, based on the research, was filed and appeared on the order paper at the 28th sitting. The 28th sitting was the 22nd of March, 2024. It's more than a year later. We are in April of 2025. And you know what was the response to this question, Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer? To respond to this question, and this is a question to the Division of Food Production, asking about a list of farmers, the areas of agriculture disaggregated by village, type of produce, and the quantity produced. The Secretary in her response said more than a year later that the Division of Food Security natural resources, the environment, and sustainable development would need to commission an entire survey to respond to this question. Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, more than a year later, this is the response that is coming. I want to go further, Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer. Another question was asked, and again, more than a year later. Question number 236 appeared on the order paper on the 33rd sitting, and this is, sorry, question number 232 appeared on the order paper on the 29th sitting, and this was the 25th of April 2024, basically asking about listing some list of ACH checks by departments and by suppliers. Again, the member said that she can't respond to that question. We have another question asking about the whole issue of the shark attack and the bounty, whether or not she was consulted. And did the secretary approve the shark attack bounty? You know what was the response to the question? Taxpayers' money was not sent. The bounty was recalled, therefore no bounty existed. Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, the question was whether or not the secretary was consulted before the issuance of the bounty of $10,000 issued on the 26th of April 2024. So, Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, it is important, and these discussions continue to circulate in the public domain. And as the minority leader explained, the questions are not just questions by the minority, but these are questions that are filed on behalf of the people. The people come to us, the people talk, the people express how they feel about certain issues, and they need questions answered, and as a result, we file these questions. So, Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, for the member to come and speak about there's a place, which is the Standing Orders Committee, that this motion should have gone to, Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer. I don't think we need a Standing Orders Committee for members opposite to be accountable and transparent. We don't need a Standing Orders Committee to say when questions are filed, you don't need to take 2 and 3 years to answer them, Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer. They promise accountability, they promise transparency, they promise good governance, they promise to fix it. So, Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, for the member to come and talk about the PNM government were culprits. The people dealt with the PNM government. The people, you portrayed yourselves as being able to fix things and to do things better. So the reason for not answering questions ought not to be that the PNM did it, so you come in to do it worse than them. You said that you will fix it. So when questions are filed, when there's a time for you to be accountable and transparent, no Standing Orders Committee, no member opposite should have to cajole you to be accountable. And Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, it is very upsetting that there is some justification being given to not respond to questions in a timely manner. And we see a precedent being set in this chamber year after year, sitting after sitting, that when members are not prepared to answer the hard questions, when members opposite are not prepared to be accountable and transparent, they stay away from the sitting. And it is clear evidence today, Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, none of the questions filed by the minority councillor were able to be addressed or answered today. And these are questions that came forward from previous sittings, Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer. So, Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, we need those who said that they could govern and they could fix it to do better. And Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, democracy that we all strive to achieve, democracy that we try to uphold in this house, cannot thrive in darkness. Oversight cannot exist without information. When questions go unanswered, accountability is eroded. And when accountability is eroded, Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, trust collapse. And yes, I want to go back to the point about having a place. Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, we have seen since this administration has come into office, the channels that should be used to action several things, those channels are not operating well, because we see suppliers who provide services for different departments in the THA. Those suppliers would submit their invoices and have to wait a very long time to be paid. And the place that they go to get their issues resolved is social media. We saw a lady singing because she wasn't paid for heritage. Isn't there a mechanism where services rendered by suppliers that they should be paid? But because, Madam Presiding Officer, Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, that is not working efficiently, it gives rise to people doing all unconventional things for their voices to be heard, one of which is to go on social media and name and shame. And the minority leader indicated if we did not, or if the minority did not go in the public domain and speak about oral questions not being answered, then we would have had a similar situation, because we have oral questions on the order paper appearing month after month, year after year, and not being answered. And it's not until this matter was taken in the public domain that we saw some improvement. So the public, the minority, everybody recognizes that you really have to call out this administration for them to do what is required and what is right. And Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, I want to highlight just a few other questions, because it's important that the people of Tobago get some level of accountability and transparency. So, Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, we would have had an issue where we asked the question to the Secretary of Infrastructure relating to rent and lease, the rent and lease program. And there were several parts to the question. We asked about the companies engaged in the program, the list of tools and vehicles and equipment provided, the value of each rental service, the total outstanding to each supplier, and what payments were made to the suppliers to date. And Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, we asked those questions again because we saw a trend in the increase of rent and lease in the Tobago House of Assembly, and in particular in that division. So we wanted to know exactly what is causing this increase. And to me, this is public funds. This is funds, this is my taxpayer, your taxpayer, the public taxpayers' funds that are being spent. And by right, the people should know what their taxpayers' dollars are being spent on. Today, we have had no response to that question, Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer. We also, again, in an attempt to hold the administration and the Secretary of Tourism accountable, who is again absent today, if we go back to January 4th, when the Secretary came into office, there was a Daily Express headline which read, "Getting back to 100,000 foreign tourists, new THA Tourism Secretary's goal." And Madam Presiding Officer, the Secretary spoke that coming out of COVID, her aim is to return to 100,000 international visitors. She also went on, the article also went on to report the Secretary as indicating that there will be a resumption in international flights from January 10th, including a return to British Airways followed by KLM. So in an attempt to keep the administration accountable, this responsible minority asked the question, can the Secretary indicate the monthly number of international arrivals disaggregated by carrier and port of departure to Tobago for the period January 2022 to September 2023? Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, this question again remains unanswered, and the list goes on and on and on. So, Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, we are calling for a change in the way that the members opposite treat with written questions, and we cannot continue to do business like this. And as the minority leader would have made some recommendations, I want to also agree with those recommendations that all written questions currently on the order paper should have a response within 21 days of this sitting, or no later than 2 sittings after the submission of the question. And Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, the minority is required to file questions 21 days in advance. There's sufficient time, Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, for the questions to be appropriately addressed and responded to. So, Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, we are asking and we are calling on the secretaries in the various divisions to not continue to erode the public trust. And in closing, Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, the member who spoke, the member for Bethel New Grange, again spoke to this whole issue of politicking and politicization of the motion. But the facts remain that there are questions on the order paper that remain unanswered for more than 2 years. And the motion is about governance versus dysfunction. It's about transparency versus secrecy. And it's about the people of Tobago versus the wall of silence based on the questions that remain unanswered on the order paper. And we are all here to serve the people and not hide from the people, to answer and not to deflect, and to be held accountable and not to be immune. So in conclusion, Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, I support this motion, and I urge members opposite and this House to do the same, because when the questions go unanswered, the people remain unheard, and we cannot allow this to continue. So, Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, I thank you for the opportunity to contribute to this debate.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer. I will be brief. A pleasant good evening to the people of Mount St. George Goodwood, who has entrusted me with their representation. And I stand here just to debunk a few myths. One, as a member of the Standing Order Committee, our responsibility I am not reading.
Okay, well, leave the phone down.
Points. There's a difference.
Members, please be seated. Please be seated. Members, let us not get out of order. I am sitting here and I will deal with issues as such. Allow me to respond. I have been sitting here, the member has the phone in her hand, but she has been looking at me most of the time, so I deduce that she's not reading. Member, you may continue.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer. The Standing Order Committee, which is responsible for the committees that govern this House, as part of the Standing Order Committee, our duty is to go through every standing order one by one to see where flaws are and to make the necessary changes. So for the minority to stand here and to claim for some reason that that is not the place, or the minority side on the whole, to have these issues addressed is incorrect. Lawyers were brought on to assist us in all the processes. So yes, I do not agree with the motion that you have brought, right? And the purpose of the Standing Order Committee is to ensure that we have good governance and running of this institution. So I support my colleague to my left by what he have addressed here today, right? So in saying that the Standing Order Committee is not doing its due diligence may mean that you have to go to the Privilege Committee, because that is an untrue statement. I rest.
Correct.
Member for Bukum and Pleasant, you may now join the debate.
Yes, I too will be brief. Of course, I must be thankful to the people of Bukum and Pleasant who allowed me to share another 2 minutes in the House. Yeah? You know, just another correction. The minority said that the upcoming events on Monday to determine whether the people, he said, and I think we need to correct it. It's not a judgment call on this assembly. It's a judgment call on Mrs. Shamfa Kodjo-Lewis and Mrs. Ayanna Webster Roy. And I think the people of this country and the world need to know why they're going to the polls on Monday. It's not a judgment call on us. It's a judgment call on Tobago East and Tobago West. It's a judgment call that will determine whether or not we'll be debating differently, whether we'll get the funds we need, whether we'll get the respect we need, whether we'll be sleeping in the airport. These are the matters that are going to be addressed in the upcoming elections. I just had to clear that up, yeah? And he spoke, and I would say, and I hope the word is a good word, deceptively about members of this side enjoying up to $500,000 in per diem. I think that kind of language is misleading without the backing of facts. Yeah? It just shoot these things out, and the public will walk away thinking that we travel without purpose.
Member, seated. Members, Minority Leader, when you were presenting, you were afforded the opportunity to be heard. I would appreciate it if you allow the member the opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, and it could appear as though that we people are just carrying on loads of monies which are not correct. It's not correct. If he needs to make statements as these, he should back it up with some kind of facts. And I looked at the document that was shared during the conversation in the House, and the minority councillor spoke to a question. And I was looking at the same question. And I want the House and the world to listen to the question carefully, right? Can the Secretary provide a list of all the farmers in all areas of agriculture, disaggregated by village, type of produce, and quantity produced annually? The guy who plants one flavor pepper tree could consider himself a farmer, because he's registered, he could consider himself a farmer.
Of course.
Yeah? He might have had an acre when he got his badge. His badge is legitimate, he's a farmer, but he's only planting 2 holes of dasheen.
There are certain requirements that must be fulfilled. Whether you have five herd of sheep or what acreage, but there's a specific definition for a farmer. And what we are saying here, that under the Division of Agriculture, you should have that information documented, who your farmers are, where they are, and what they produce.
Can I continue? Yes. Thank you.
Members, member for Goodwood, Mount St. George. Members, please do not let our emotions get the better of us. Member for Darrell Spring Wim, you continue to interrupt. Member for Darrell Spring Wim, you continue to interrupt, and I ask that you stop. Members, member for Goodwood Mount St. George, I ask you to control your emotions. I won't be speaking to anyone again about controlling their emotions. Member, please continue.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer. The definition of a farmer should not take us long to figure out. I think I am a registered farmer also. I have my badge, I'm legitimate. I have a few banana trees, a few plantings. Acreage is minuscule. I'm a farmer. Yeah? And this question, just by its very structure, appears to put so much stress on the entire Division of Agriculture just to get this information together. So the point I'm getting at is, Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, is one of the reasons these questions take so long to answer is that the minority needs to do some kind of research in how to get the questions pointed and to get them to a place where they are easily understood, and so the answers could be forthcoming. Because when you look at the question says in all areas of agriculture, disaggregated by village, type of produce, and quantity produced annually. This is not an easy feat. So I'm suggesting that sometimes the answers might not come when they want it because of how they structure the questions. And my final point, thank you, and my final point is that the Standing Orders Committee I'm supporting, because if in the motion you are suggesting that the way to deal with this matter is to go to the Standing Orders Committee, we could have bypassed all this, go straight to the Standing Orders Committee and have them look at the challenge the secretaries might be facing in answering questions. So I must join my colleagues in, I almost said dissing this motion. Is that okay? Dissing this motion. Thank you very much.
Mandatory Leader, you may wrap up the debate.
Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, I sat, I listened, at times I perhaps interrupted. But Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, especially when I listened to the member from Bethel, I think Bethel, and you know, I am reminded of a powerful biblical verse, Matthew 7:8, which says, "Do not cast your pearls before swine, lest they trample them underfoot and turn to attack you." That is what it feels like sometimes trying to reason with this member. Because this member seems to lack principles in parliamentary order in this chamber. And when he's unable to treat with the substance of the motion, he then deflects and descends into the gutter, dealing with low blows, personal attacks, and we see it over and over. And you know what is so disappointing is the foul-mouthed language that comes from this. Yes, and case in point. And, you know, you would think a member who in his other dispensation, soon to return, will have a little more decorum, a little more couthness about himself. And this member continues over and over, time and time again, to come here as a big bully in this house. Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, the main response from those opposite is trying to create the picture as though the Standing Order Committee is going to treat or slap on the hands and get this issue. There's an issue to be solved. What is the issue? The issue is that we have questions on this order paper going now for almost 2 years. And we have been trying to figure out how could we get these members to answer the questions. And lo and behold, this is but one of the mechanisms we actually got them to respond. Because after a whole year, it is only when the motion was brought to this house, you have people scrambling, fumbling, and finally coming with a response to questions. That is the reality. That question that was asked about agriculture, and I just want to share with the member whose son's supposed to be shining a lot, just to answer him. Agriculture, if you want to do smart agriculture, you must know who is the clientele to whom you are servicing. And therefore, if you are admitting that you do not have that kind of information, then how could you fix agriculture? And it is no surprise why agriculture has declined under this administration in terms of its production. Because if you don't know who is producing what, where they're producing it, and how I can assist them in producing more, what are you doing? You're wasting your time. And so for the member to come here and admit that that information is too difficult an information to provide is an admittance of dereliction of duty, an admittance of incompetence, an admittance of people who just don't know how to govern and manage. That is what is plain to see just by that response. Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, what is also plain to see is that this administration seems to be an administration that is governed by embarrassment. And what does that mean? This administration seems to react only when they are named and shamed and when you embarrass them into action. We see it all the time on social media. If you want a job, just go on social media and tag a secretary.
Relevance.
We are talking about, they are saying, in terms of the question, the motion, that it could have been solved in the Standing Order Committee. And I'm saying no. I recognize as a member, both observing their actions, that it's only when you name and shame this administration, you get them to act. So while we are working in the Standing Orders Committee, yes, there's work to be done. And just to clarify, I want people to understand the work we were doing. We, as the Standing Order Committee, met an already prepared document that was not approved. And that provided the core basis upon which the work of the Standing Order Committee functioned. Therefore, we found it most relevant in the first instance to look at that document and really treat with the substance of that document. But we have a real pressing issue in front of us, and this is why the motion as a resolution says, in addition to all that would have been reviewed, let us also take up this issue and instruct the Standing Orders Committee, because ultimately the House as a whole is but the body that manages and governs and oversees the entire function of the House. The Standing Orders Committee is but is devolved responsibility that the House would have put upon the Standing Orders Committee, and there's nothing in the Standing Orders Committee that we cannot as a House resolve within ourselves.
Can the member delegate, presiding officer?
Sure.
Minority leader, we have the listening and viewing public who they want to be educated by what happens in the
Point of
House.
clarification.
We have.
I gave way for a point of clarification.
We have on our
I gave
order.
What's your
Yeah, so I'm getting to it.
No, you have to get to it because I'm not.
On the order of business as item number H, subsection 2. Presentation of reports from select committees. Minority leader, aren't you putting the cart before the horse? Shouldn't you have allowed these papers to be laid here in the House from your committee? And then just as the member, I think for Boko Mount Pleasant said, then we have a discussion if you didn't get the support you required from the committee. You've brought it to the House.
The
process is not complete.
My time now, please.
The process is not complete, and so I'm trying to understand. And so I want clarity on why we didn't allow the process to be completed. Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer.
Continue, member.
Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, if I give way, it's for a point of clarification which should be brief.
I'm asking for it now.
All right?
Member, continue your presentation, please.
Thank you so much. Again, the point of this motion is because over and over a period, we have a situation where the members refuse to answer questions, and you as a minority leader is looking within the standing orders to see if there's any provisions that will allow you to force the hands of those on the other side to actually respond. It's like you're begging them. And why do we have to beg them to do their work, which is respond to questions? What do you have to hide? Because if you don't have cocoa in the sun, you don't have to fear rain. And it's only people with something to hide will so deflect, to the point that in this motion, they have admitted, they have not basically denied that they refuse to answer questions, I want to beg on you to understand that. What they are saying to me is that I, as the minority leader, should have brought up in a standing orders committee this issue and tried to force the hand, but even that would not have worked because the report is not even approved. The standing orders had not been amended, so therefore the problem would have continued, and that's why I came here today, is to get them to respond forthwith. That is the substance, the crux of the issue. We have too many questions going for too long that deserve an answer. And why would you not just answer? Why you are hiding behind standing orders? So if the silent, you are saying to all of Tobago, wherever the standing orders are silent, but require you to act on behalf of the people, you will not so act unless it is in here. And what that speaks to is about people who lacks principle, who lacks ethics, and who lacks good moral. Because if you're supposed to do the right thing, whether someone tells you it is the right thing, or once you know that is what is good, once you know that is what is proper, I do not have to go in a standing orders committee to besiege you all. to answer simple questions. And to try to throw it back on me, the minority leader, like if I am doing something, you'll swear I am the one committing the abominable act against the people of Tobago. You are the one not answering. You are the one who failed to respond. But yet you're coming to tell me, somehow, I am the one who is culpable because I didn't bring it up in a standing orders committee. This is about strengthening the institutions of the assembly. And if there's an opportunity to strengthen it at any point, if it is now or then, whenever it comes an opportunity to strengthen the institution, I think we all, as reasonable members of this assembly, should welcome the opportunity to strengthen the assembly where there are gaps. We all admit that, one, the THA Act by its very nature is imperfect, and so is its standing orders. And as we go along from time to time, you will spot areas of the standing orders that just simply need to be addressed. And in some instances, it may be more, one issue may be more urgent than the other. So this is a very simple motion. It's a motion, if you have honest people, will admit that there are questions outstanding that should be answered, and those who know that they are culpable should provide the answers. That is the first resolution. If you are one of those who are so identified as not responding to questions, simply provide the answers. And in the second instance, we acknowledge, because we acknowledge it is the standing orders ultimately that needs to be refined. And if, as you are agreeing that it should be dealt with in the standing orders, all we are saying is agree that we will refer this issue as one of other issues to be considered. But let this be something now that the standing orders committee knows that we have to take a look at. That is the simple basis of this motion, not to come here and describe me in all kind of derogatory terms, because I bring something here to help all of us and help the House, strengthen the institution. That is a democratic parliamentary institution. We all spend thousands to go in CPA and discuss how we make the parliament and our institutions, our committees stronger, more rigorous. And now when you come back here, you're basically disregarding it. Some of you all go on fancy photo shoots while we're out here. So is it that you're not taking what we went there for as the real mission? Because if you vote against this motion, it tells me you do not care about strengthening this institution. And we're wasting our money sending people out there. And with these few words, I thank you and I beg to move that this motion be considered.
Honourable members, the question put is, whereas the Executive Council has demonstrated a disregard for transparency, accountability and good governance in its reporting to the Tobago House of Assembly, and whereas the failure of secretaries to provide timely responses to written questions on general administrative issues of divisions, including but not limited to finance, procurement, ethics, and other issues of significant public interest, deprives the House and the public of critical information, including matters related. Be it resolved that this House highlights that members of the Executive Council have failed to provide responses to written questions, and urges that all outstanding responses to the questions for written answers be submitted without further delay. And be it further resolved that this House supports the Standing Orders Committee to consider and recommend an appropriate amendment to the Standing Orders to establish a definitive time frame for the submission of written answers and to prescribe consequences for non-compliance. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any against, say no. No. The motion has been denied.
Thank you.
Leader of Assembly. Oh. Sorry. Leader of Assembly Business.
Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, I now stand to move that this House stands adjourned for a date to be fixed.
Honorable member, the question put is that this House stands adjourned for a date to be fixed. All in favor say aye. Any against? Say no. The ayes have it. This House now stands adjourned for a date to be fixed.
Bicentennial celebrations, we are going to fully immerse you in Tobago's legislative history.
We are going to show you the importance of understanding oneself for the present and future development of our people. And for us, it all starts here.
The celebration starts today, April 23. This marks the day that Governor F.P. Robinson laid the foundation stone for construction of the building in 1821. It took 4 years for the building to be completed, and it is considered to be one of the best examples of Georgian architecture in the region. Today, it stands uptown Scarborough for 2 centuries, and you get a chance to touch 200 years of history at this year's Night of Mystery, Saturday, 26 April 2025. It's a tour of the building, but with a twist.
We kick off the first event for our babies, our future. We wanted to find a unique and creative way of including our preschoolers in our celebration. Little Voice, Big Heritage gives our preschoolers the opportunity to do a little research with the help of mommy, daddy, and of course the teachers, to script a verse about anything legislative and present it to an audience. We'll even help by providing a breakdown of our legislative history from 1825 to 2025 for you to choose from.
The month of May is going to be jam-packed with activities for our young debaters as the highly anticipated primary plenary caravan. Our staff will visit all primary schools and begin training sessions from May 12th. Last year was definitely a learning curve for us. As we visited schools, we quickly learned our primary schoolers wanted to know more. And in an effort to fulfill our mandate of engaging and educating at all levels, we have decided to include their voices in the much talked about autonomy discussions. What will be presented? We just have to wait and see when these primary school students take over the House to hold their